Historical Happy Hour, the podcast that explores new and exciting historical fiction. I'm your host, Jane Healey, and in today's episode, we welcome New York Times best-selling author Ellen Marie Wiseman to discuss her latest novel, The Lies They Told. Beautiful cover, too, which has been called a riveting and important historical novel, which I totally agree. It releases a week from today, July 29th, and is available for pre-order now. Welcome, Ellen. So happy to have you.
I'm happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I'm going to do a quick intro bio about you, and I'm sure you have a lot of fans on here already, and then I will jump into questions.
Okay.
So, Ellen Marie Wiseman is a New York Times and USA Today best-selling author known for writing novels based on real historical injustices, including The Orphan Collector, What She Left Behind, The Life She Was Given, and The Lost Girls of Willowbrook, which was an Indie Next selection and the Barnes& and Noble Our Monthly Pick. Her novels have been published worldwide, translated into 20 languages, and sold more than 1 million copies in the United States alone. She lives with her family on the shores of Lake Ontario and can be found at ellenmariewiseman.com. Again, welcome. Thanks for doing this tonight.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
So this novel, I was just saying, is a gut punch.
Mhm.
And it's one of these novels that I didn't really, I mean, I knew about the history, but not to the level that I learned about in the story. It illuminates a dark period of American history in the early decades of the 1900s. Not only highlights the brutal treatment of immigrants to America, but the shocking history of the American eugenics movement here. So, talk about the premise of the novel and how you came to write it.
Okay. The novel is set in 1930s Virginia, and it follows a young immigrant mother who comes to America looking for a better life for herself and her daughter. But the minute she steps on Ellis Island, she's like seeing families being separated, and she's faced with the threat of being deported, of being labeled feeble-minded, of being labeled medically unfit or defective, which can lead to, like I said, deportation or imprisonment. And so she finally makes it through that. And then when she gets to her destination in the Blue Ridge Mountains, she thinks that she's finally safe. But then she soon realizes that the children who are going to be under her care have been taught to hide from the sheriff. And she realizes that they are basically, even though they're US citizens, are basically faced with the same threats that she faced on Ellis Island, which is being labeled, you know, defective, feeble-minded, illiterate, ignorant, etc. And the reason that happened on to the Blue Ridge Mountain people in the period where she was, or the area where she was, is because the government wanted to make these people look bad so that they could take their land to form the Shenandoah National Park. But I used that as an example because it was a good example of a family being separated because of eugenics. But it's also important to remember that those kinds of raids happened all over the United States during the eugenics movement. Um, so I first learned about eugenics when I was writing my debut novel. It was a World War II novel called The Plum Tree. That's when I learned that the United States was the leader in the eugenics movement, and they were like the first country to implement forced sterilizations, and that the Nazis took a lot of their theories and beliefs and procedures from American eugenicists. You know, when we think of creating the master race, we all automatically think of the Nazis and the Holocaust. But in fact, that ideology started in the United States decades before the Nazis came into power.
Yeah, that you have some incredible quotes, epigraphs at the beginning of the novel. And I will just read one of them that blew my mind. This book is my Bible. That's a quote from Adolf Hitler in a fan letter to Madison Grant, American supremacist eugenicist. I knew I was going to not pronounce this right. Eugenicist and author of The Passing of the Great Race. So, you sent me some excellent questions and points, and I really appreciate that. So, eugenics is basically pseudoscience, right? It's a racist pseudoscience, like you said, commonly associated with the Nazis. But you said for 3 decades of the 20th century, eugenics was a household word, and many Americans, including powerful proponents like Winston Churchill, George Bernard Shaw, and Margaret Sanger, were in thrall of its promise to uplifting the human race. Talk about your research for this. Like and that, I mean,
Oh,
it still like gives me chills that this was so prevalent and widespread in America even before Hitler.
it really was. I mean, it wasn't uncommon back then to like see posters from the American Eugenicist Society, talking about how many people were born every 15 seconds that were going to be a burden to society. Um, and also, as far as, and my mind just went blank because I have too much information in it.
I know, and it's almost launch week. You got a lot
I
going on.
know, I know. It's crazy. Okay, can you repeat the last part of that question? I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
yeah. So I'm really curious about like your deep dive into their research in the subject of
Oh,
American
yeah, yeah.
eugenics.
Yeah, it was really, really shocking. Um, like I said, to find out that as a matter of fact, the Nazis turned to California because their sterilization program was so great that they like turned to them for ideas. And it was far from a fringe movement because a lot of um, famous corporations and things like the Carnegie Institute and the Rockefeller Center financially were backing this. And eugenicists believe that one of the ways that they should get rid of inferior populations was by incorporating gas chambers into every city. But they realized that the American public probably wasn't ready to implement that. So instead, like doctors, some doctors, not all doctors, in institutions would find different ways of, getting rid of these inferior populations. Like in one institution in Nebraska, I think it was, doctors infected patients with tuberculosis, thinking that anybody that was genetically fit would survive. And, of course, 40% of the people died from it. And then they just would be like lethal neglect, they just wouldn't take care of them so that they would die. And during the height of the movement, there was a lot of popular movies and books about eugenics, and there was one that became really popular. It was called The Black Stork, and it was about a doctor that who was considered heroic because he talked the parents into letting their disabled child die.
Ugh, just
So it's
disgusting.
crazy. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is crazy, and it
That's
wasn't
why
that
my
long
mind
ago.
goes blank because there's just so much I could say.
Right. Oh yeah, yeah. You have some amazing author notes at the end. I should also mention. And one thing, and this was another little known fact that I remember hearing about one of the Kennedy sister who was institutionalized and sterilized. So I want to talk about that. Your novel focuses not on just how eugenics was used to control and criminalize immigrants, but also the way people in power leaned into eugenics as a means to pathologize class and steal what little the rural poor in Virginia had. Most
Right.
notably, their hope for future generations in the form of sterilization of women and young girls. And
Mhm. And
that
boys.
and boys. And that was so disgusting. And talk about this strategy. And again, this is one of these things that I feel like has been kind of swept under the rug in
Yeah.
American history. Anita Morrison is raising her hand. I will take questions for Ellen at the end in the Q&A or the chat, but I can't, I can't focus on raised hands when I'm interviewing. Sorry, Anita.
Okay. I'm sorry. Go ahead and say that again one more
I will
time.
say this again, yes, because I interrupted you just like my husband told me not to. So,
Oh,
talk
that's
about
fine.
the aspect of eugenics movement and why sterilization was part of their strategy, and it was
Oh,
so devastating and effective.
yeah. They were allowed to take children, even elementary school age children, from the homes of people that they thought were unfit and institutionalize them and sterilize them while telling them they were having, their appendix out or something. And some of these kids never made it home. Some of them were actually redistributed to be raised in the home of a more appropriate elite family. Um, and a lot of times, women and children that were sterilized, and men too, didn't know that they didn't realize until years and years later that they were sterilized, and they kept wondering why they couldn't have children. So yeah, it was horrific. And even now, 31 states, including Washington, D.C., have laws in effect that allow sterilization of incarcerated people and immigrants, and one other that I can't think of right now.
Yeah,
So it's crazy.
it is. And that was a shocking fact too. The fact that that's still on the books is horrifying.
Yeah,
I want to, so this is your first novel set in the American South. And like you said, eugenics was a popular movement across the United States. Why
yeah.
did you focus on Virginia? Why did you decide to set the story in the mountains of Virginia?
Well, I knew that I wanted to place the main character Lena with a family that was going to go through it. So, she had already gone through so much on Ellis Island, and so I wanted her to, it's such a large topic that to pick out the things that would directly affect her was difficult. And so I wanted to make sure that she was with a family that was going to be affected by this. And I ran across, and I don't even remember how, because I started writing this book, almost 3 years ago. Um, I ran across the Blue Ridge Mountain people. There was 500 families or something that were evicted from their land, so that for the forming of Shenandoah National Park. And so that was a really clear example of how eugenics was used against US citizens. And like I said, it happened in other families, but that was just a really clear example. And so that's how I ended up choosing that.
Did you visit that area of the country for your
I
research at all?
didn't, but I want to.
I know it looks beautiful. It sounded beautiful. You created such a
Yeah,
beautiful setting, like such a sense of place that I was like, oh, I've never been there. So
yeah.
yeah.
I wanted to convey, that it was a beautiful place, and the people that lived there loved it, and that Lena fell in love with it and things, so that people would really feel the heartache when it was taken from them.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. When I was researching my novel Goodnight from Paris, I did some research on the pro-Nazi movement in America in the 1930s, and I was chilled by how some of the rhetoric in the 30s in America matches some of the rhetoric
Yeah,
today. And
yeah.
you brought that up as well, including you included some of the propaganda and rhetoric at the beginning of the novel. What do you want readers to understand about the parallels in American history?
Well, yeah, learning about the eugenics in the past is important, but it's also important to realize that these old ideologies are coming up in new forms. During the first part of the United States when it was forming, immigrants were encouraged to come and help settle the land and build the economy. And then during, I think, the first half or the later half of the 19th century, people started to fear immigrants. And that's when eugenicists got involved and started making these strange IQ tests on Ellis Island, and measuring heads and noses and asking stupid questions. And today we're many Americans are falsely led to believe that all immigrants are criminals or eat cats and dogs or whatever. So these old fears are being exploited, and immigrants are being rounded up and under the pretense of keeping the country safe, when in fact, these ICE detention centers are run by for-profit companies. They're getting billions of dollars from the government. So
Hmm.
it's just the when I started writing this, I had no idea how alarmingly prevalent it would be now.
Yeah, and I feel like the timing is really really good though, right? Like I feel you can't time books, right? As you know, because you start working on them sometimes for years, and but I'm like, oh, this is this couldn't be better. I mean, I think that lesser known stories in history like this are so important. I'm sorry, I can never hold it up right. But but yeah, I think the timing is great for and I think that people are going to just be blown away by the story. And I want to mention too, because it's a dark topic, and there are some, but it has some really uplifting and moments as well, and hopeful moments. So
Yeah.
yeah,
I like to always try to end things on a semi-happy ending because there's a lot of heavy stuff in my books.
yes, and you do, and like I was bawling. Like I don't cry that often from books. I read a lot of books. This one at the end, I was like, oh my God, yeah, it's a gut
Oh,
punch, but in the best way, and it is
good,
uplifting. I want to mention that to people. Um,
good.
you're a first generation American. Your mother was a German immigrant to
Mhm.
America, and I read an article about how you said about how visiting Germany had a profound impact on you. And I love the main character is an immigrant from Germany. How did your mother's experience influence this story?
Oh, well, I think that, it's funny because my first book is loosely based on my mother's experiences growing up in Germany during World War II, because I wanted to tell what it was like for the average German family during the war. But, she left Germany at 20 years old all by herself. She had met a US soldier and he wrote to her and said, "Come over and marry me," and she did. And that bravery and that, courage to just leave everything behind and take a chance that you're going to have a better life is so profound to me. Um and so I think, the fact that Lena, the main character in the lies they told, is that's all she wants. She just wants a better life for her family and her daughter. And the fact that it doesn't turn out that way for a while um,
Hmm.
is profound. It seems to happen a lot.
Yeah, it's very profound. And another thing I was thinking when I was reading the first part of Lena's story is that I feel like the whole Ellis Island has been kind of there's the mythology about it, like in certain in commercials, and then you see
Mhm.
like family coming over and the boat and the Statue of Liberty, and everyone's clean and happy and well fed, and that was not the case back in the day.
Right. And I think it might have been at
Yeah,
first when we were welcoming immigrants, and then it changed.
yeah, and you really show like it's a stark reminder of how the conditions were at
Yeah.
that time. Um, so you've been writing for a while. What's your character development process like? How did you come up with, Lena and Silas and all the cast of characters? Because they were really well drawn. Even the dialects, that must have been kind of tricky, and I loved that. So talk about character
Yeah.
development.
That the dialect was really tricky for me. I had to ask some of my readers, are you from that area? Because I need some sayings. And of course, I researched it a lot. But yeah, I mean, all of my books feature a young woman who is caught up in these extraordinary historical happenings. And so, I automatically knew I had to have a young woman. Um, I really, I just I don't even know how I do it. You know what I mean?
I
It's
do.
like I wanted, at first I thought, oh, her and Silas were gonna fall in love, and then I was like, nah, that's too easy. Well, not easy, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean.
Um, and I wanted the children, especially Bonnie and Jack Henry, I wanted her to really fall in love with them. And so I wanted to make them real people, and especially Bonnie. I really like her. Um so I just try to, make them strong and make them also have faults and things like that.
Yeah. Well, you do a wonderful job at it.
No,
So I
thank
have
you.
more writing questions for you that I ask everyone that comes on. What is your writing process like? Are you a plotter? Are you a pantser? Are you somewhere in between?
Um I'm usually a plotter, but of course I don't stick to that, outline. Um,
Hmm.
I really like to know the ending before I start, because if I don't, then it's really hard. Um, So I usually do an outline and try to stick to that. It just gives me a little bit of a map. Otherwise, I don't, if I'm on a deadline, which I always am, I don't have like 6 months to go in the wrong direction, you
Hmm.
know. So I try to be a plotter.
Um, what part of the writing process do you love, and what part do you find the most challenging?
Oh, Lordy. First drafts are hard. Um, Second drafts are harder. Um, I think that my favorite part is when I like pick up a book after it came out because I haven't really looked at the manuscript in almost 2 years. And I read it and I go, oh, that's not too bad. You know what I mean?
I do
Or
too.
else when I read a draft that I wrote and it makes me cry, then I think, oh, well, this is good. But yeah, the whole drafting and the whole editing, I really like the part I love to write first sentences. That's my favorite. Um, and the part where you're like just going over it one more time before you push send.
Yeah, that is a good feeling. I agree.
Yeah.
I like that part too. Um,
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm always shocked when people say they enjoy writing the first draft because I find that that's just
Oh,
every time it's blood from a stone. Every
right. You
time.
think you're never gonna figure it out. And
Yeah,
it's like I'm never this is a huge puzzle and I'm never gonna figure it out, but then somehow you do.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. When you're on deadline for a book, what is your writing routine like?
Oh, I wish I had a routine. Well, let's see. I babysit the twins and the 5-year-old once or twice a week. And I have two aging parents and soccer games and baseball games and all sorts of things. So on the days that I do have free to myself, I have to have everything like my emails answered, my dishes done, everything, so that when I start, I don't have to stop and, you know,
Hmm.
start again or stop and make dinner. I try to make dinner ahead of time or whatever because once I start, I don't want to stop. I want to get
Hmm.
it done. So I kind of have a routine, but not really. It's
Well,
hard to
got it.
stick to, let's put it that way.
Totally understand. Um, what advice do you have for aspiring authors about writing and about getting published?
Um, Well, I went to a tiny high school with like 400 students, K through 12, and I didn't have, I never, they never offered a writing course or creative writing course. And I never went to college or anything. I just read a lot. I read a lot. And eventually I was like, sometimes I'd read a book that would be like, I could write better than that. So I read a lot of books on the craft of writing, and I just practiced and practiced and practiced. And I somehow figured it out. But I think, practicing is really, really important. But also, as far as getting published, one of the websites that really helped me learn about the publishing industry, which I think is really important because a lot of people don't understand how it works, is agentquery.com.
Mm,
It's got a lot of information on there that people that want to get published need to know.
yeah, that's an excellent website. That's an excellent
Yeah.
resource. Yeah, 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 because that's a whole other thing.
Yes.
You can learn the craft, but then the business side of this industry is a whole beast into itself.
Sure
So
is. It sure is.
yeah. So I get a lot of books from a lot of publishers. I open this one, I'm like, oh, that's a gorgeous cover. Like it's so beautiful. Do you have the say in your cover designs? Because I love this one. I wish it's like the flowers and the house.
Yeah.
I loved it.
They always ask me for ideas, but sometimes I think they're just being nice. So I usually give them my ideas, and then a couple times they have run some by me, but um normally it's like, here's your cover.
Nice. Well,
And
they do a
thankfully,
good,
yeah,
beautiful job.
thankfully I love them all.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I have a couple more questions, and then if people have questions in the chat, you can put them in the chat or the Q&A if you have questions for Ellen. Was it always called The Lies They Told? Was that always the title?
Um, n- I'm trying to think what I called it first. I don't remember what I called it first. But I what I did was I gave a list of title ideas to my editor and he picked one. Sometimes he goes right with what I'm calling it, like on the manuscript I send him, but we weren't, I don't remember, like I said, I don't remember what it was called. But yeah, so it was one of my ideas.
Oh, good. That's good.
Yeah.
Cover the titles and covers are really tricky, I think.
Yeah.
Are you ready to talk about what you're working on next?
Yeah. Um, I'm working on the trouble well, it's loosely based on Elan, which is one of the first troubled teen schools in the United States. Um, and that kind of stemmed from Synanon. There's a lot of abuse. Unbelievable what those schools are like. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and unfortunately, there's still like 5 or 10,000 of them in the United States. So because I write historical fiction, it has to be on one of the first schools. So that's what I'm working on is a troubled teen school book.
Oh, that is fascinating, and I think also a really important story.
Yeah.
I'm not really on TikTok, but I like kind of like peruse on TikTok, and there are girls on there who were sent to these schools who are survivors of these schools who talk about their experiences and connect with people who have been. It's just it's horrible. Like yeah,
Yeah.
these
And
places.
there's no regulation in those
No,
places.
yeah.
They're getting away with a lot.
Yeah, so no, that's another important story. How do you prefer readers to best keep in touch with you?
Usually Facebook is my thing. You
Hmm.
know, I'm on Instagram a little bit, but mostly Facebook or leaving reviews is always really good too.
Yes, for sure. Reviews and pre-orders. I always say pre-orders are
Yes.
very important for authors, so
Yes.
I'll remember that too. One question from Christine Mott. Hello, Christine. If you could personally interview someone from that time period that you just wrote about, who would you like to interview?
Oh boy. Probably one of the like the main doctors that came up with this idea of, they believed that, the same principles that affected corn and cattle affected humans and stuff. So I think Charles Davenport, I think is his name. Like I said, I have too many facts in my head. So there's a
Mhm.
couple of the two men that really started this that I'd like to talk to them and say, what the heck were you thinking?
Right. Yeah. Like how? Yeah. Joanne Peterson asks, "Have you seen the film Origin, which was based on the book Caste? One of the things it tells is how Hitler used the way the U.S. treated African slaves and the Jim Crow laws as a pattern of how to dehumanize Jews." I have not seen the film. Have you seen that film?
They have not, but I'll check it out.
Yeah, me too. I wanted to mention too, Val Davis said, I had two great aunts that were considered mentally ill and they were sterilized in the 20s or 30s. The procedure was done in a mental hospital in Maryland, which is awful. Thank you for sharing that though. Yeah, I mean, it shows how pervasive that those
Yes.
types of things were.
Yes.
Um, and Debbie McBride said, oddly, I just heard about a doctor who was treating women immigrants being held in detention center that performed illegal surgeries. It makes me wonder, bipartisan bill in Congress brought it up. So yeah,
Yeah, in 2020, I think that the one of the nurses was like a whistleblower at one of the detention centers saying that this doctor was doing things he shouldn't be doing, and so there was some sterilization going on.
unbelievable. Yeah, and again, I mean, unfortunately good timing, but I think that this book is so wonderfully written and important, and I'm so happy to interview you about it and help you promote it and get it out into the world next week. Thank you. This has been
Yeah.
lovely. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for everybody for coming.
Yes, thank you as always, everybody. I am taking August off because my book is coming out August 1st. So I'm banking a lot of historical happy hour episodes that I'm gonna release during August and September. But the next live one will be with Reese Bowen in early September. Remember pre-orders, lies they told, and you can see upcoming episodes. Everything will be updated on janehealey.com. And have a wonderful night, everyone. Thank you so much. Thank you again, Ellen. This was great.
Thank you.
Take care.